Ryland Hayes had traveled to many distant worlds before, but nothing felt as strange as the silence that greeted him when his ship landed on the bright silver plains of Aravale. He had expected noise, movement, and the usual group of alien officials waiting to welcome a human diplomat. Instead, the air felt still, almost holding its breath, as if the entire land had paused just for him. He stood in the open doorway of his small shuttle, holding his bag in one hand, and looked around in confusion. The mission he received from Earth's Alliance was simple: visit the alien planet, observe their culture, and begin early talks for peaceful trade. His status was not high, and this was not a major political meeting. The officials had told him that only a few low-rank scouts or assistants would be waiting for him, nothing special. But as he stepped onto the soft, glass-like ground, he saw no scouts at all. No small group. No assistants. Nothing. For a moment, he wondered if the landing site was wrong or if his message had never reached the alien kingdom. He checked his communicator, but everything seemed correct. The landing was on time. The message was delivered. Yet the place looked empty, almost too empty. The wind blew gently, carrying a warm scent that reminded him of flowers back on Earth. The alien sun shone with a soft golden glow, making everything shimmer. As he walked forward slowly, he felt as if he had stepped into a dream or a scene that didn't quite belong to him. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth ground, and the silence around him felt larger with every step he took. He tried calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" But his voice faded quickly in the wide open space. Then, just as he began to think something had gone terribly wrong, he heard a distant sound, a deep, rhythmic vibration, like footsteps, but much heavier. He turned toward the horizon and saw something moving, something large. It was a formation, a group marching in perfect lines. Their armor glistened, reflecting sunlight like polished stone. As they came closer, he realized these were not ordinary guards. They were royal soldiers, and there were many of them. His heart began to beat faster. Why would a royal guard come for someone like him? He was no prince, no high diplomat. He was just Ryland Hayes, a quiet man who liked simple missions. The soldiers marched until they formed a wide circle around him. They didn't raise their weapons, but their presence alone was overwhelming. Ryland swallowed nervously. He was used to meeting different alien species, but the Aravalian soldiers were tall, graceful, and carried an aura of importance that made him feel very small. Then, the soldiers parted. From the center of their formation, a tall figure stepped forward. She walked with slow, smooth steps, her long robes shining like flowing water. Her crown sparkled with light, and her eyes bright silver and rested directly on him. It took Ryland a moment to understand what he was seeing. It was the alien, its queen herself, Queen Valara of Aravale, ruler of 6 provinces, leader of their people. Respected across the nearby star systems, she was known to appear only during grand events, ceremonies, or major negotiations. She never traveled for minor visitors, and certainly not for a simple human explorer. Ryland froze where he stood. His mind raced with questions. Had he arrived at the wrong time? Was there some emergency? What could possibly make a queen come to meet him personally? The soldiers around him knelt instantly, lowering their heads as the queen approached. Ryland looked around awkwardly, unsure what to do. He had not been trained to meet a queen on foreign soil. He tried to remember any protocol, any rule, but nothing prepared him for this. Then something happened that made his breath catch. The alien queen looked at him, her eyes softening with a kind of recognition he could not understand. She stepped forward until she stood only a few feet away from him. And then, without a word, she slowly bent down. She knelt. The ruler of an entire alien world knelt before him. The soldiers gasped softly. Some looked confused. Others looked shocked. No one seemed to understand why she was kneeling. And Ryland, who had never even spoken to a queen before, felt his heart jump in his chest. He wanted to step back, wanted to ask her to stand up, wanted to understand what was happening, but he couldn't move. It felt like the entire planet was watching. He whispered, "Please. Why are you doing that?" His voice shook slightly. He wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of doing something wrong. He didn't want to disrespect her or her people. But the queen didn't rise right away. She kept her head bowed for a long moment, almost as if she was gathering her thoughts. Then she lifted her eyes, looking at him from her kneeling position. Her expression was gentle, almost emotional. She spoke softly, with a voice that sounded calm and warm. "Where did you get the pendant you were wearing?" Rylan frowned and instinctively touched the small pendant around his neck. It was a simple thing, a small, round symbol carved on a stone-like piece. His grandmother had given it to him when he was young. She always told him it was old, passed down through many generations. He wore it mostly because it reminded him of her. He answered, "It was my grandmother's. It's been in my family for a long time." "Why?" The queen looked at the pendant with deep respect, almost as if she was looking at something sacred. Her voice trembled slightly. "That symbol. It is the sacred seal of the first ally." Rylan had no idea what that meant. But the soldiers reacted again. Some widened their eyes, some bowed deeper, and some whispered among themselves. He shook his head, confused. I think there must be a mistake. This is just a family necklace. Nothing more." The queen slowly stood up, her eyes still fixed on the pendant. "For many generations we believed this symbol was lost. It belonged to the first being who was not one of us to stand for our people. A being who united our clans in a time of danger. A being who saved us." Rylan felt a cold shiver run through his spine. He had grown up hearing his grandmother tell strange stories. Old tales that never made sense. Stories she claimed were passed down from ancestors who had traveled far. He thought they were just bedtime stories. But the queen was not telling a story. She was speaking as if she knew every detail. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Your arrival was not a small event. We sensed the seal the moment your ship entered our sky. That is why we came. That is why I kneel. You are the one who carries the legacy of our ancient protector." Rylan stared at her, speechless. Nothing felt real in that moment. He had come for a simple mission, nothing more. But the queen was looking at him with hope, respect, and something he could only describe as belief. He whispered, "But I'm not special. I don't even know anything about your history." She offered her hand gently. "Then you will learn, and we will show you why your presence means more than you think." Rylan felt dizzy with confusion, curiosity, and a strange sense of responsibility he never expected to carry. He looked at the queen, then at the pendant, then at the circle of soldiers kneeling around him. He had no idea how his life had suddenly changed, but he knew one thing. Rylan followed Queen Valara through the long, bright corridor of the royal transport vessel. Even though she had been respectful and gentle with him, he still felt nervous. Everything that had happened outside, the soldiers kneeling, the queen bowing, the talk about a sacred symbol, kept replaying in his mind. He kept touching the pendant around his neck, feeling its cool surface as if it might explain itself. The queen walked ahead of him with slow, graceful steps, her robe trailing behind like flowing silver. The guards walked at a distance, forming a quiet, protective line around them. They weren't threatening, but their tall, strong presence made Rylan feel like he was someone important, someone he didn't understand. After a few minutes, the queen glanced back at him and spoke softly. "You don't need to feel uneasy. No harm will come to you in our care." Rylan nodded quickly, though his heartbeat was still fast. I just don't know what any of this means. You said something about a first ally and the pendant, but I don't understand how my family is connected to your world." The queen stopped walking. She turned toward him with calm, kind eyes and motioned for him to sit on a small seat attached to the wall. She sat across from him, her posture straight but gentle. She took a slow breath, as if preparing to share something important. "The symbol you wear," she said, pointing to the pendant on his chest, "is not simply a mark. It is a part of our history. It is respected. It is treasured. And for many generations, it was missing." Rylan looked down at the pendant. It was the same piece he had worn since childhood. His grandmother always told him it was special, though she never explained where it truly came from. She only said, "Keep it close. It carries the story of our family." He wondered if she had known something she never told him. The queen continued, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Long ago, before our records were written in books, our clans were divided. They disagreed on everything. They struggled for harmony. And in those difficult years, a traveler came to us. He was not one of us. He came from the stars." Rylan blinked slowly. "A human?" "Yes," she replied. "A human. He arrived by accident, wounded, lost, and far from home. But instead of bringing fear or harm, he brought peace. He guided leaders who refused to stand together. He helped them talk instead of fight. He brought hope during a time of uncertainty." Rylan felt a strange pull in his chest. It sounded so unbelievable, yet the queen spoke with such certainty that he could not question it. "And the pendant?" he asked quietly. The queen gently extended her hand, asking permission to see it more closely. Rylan nodded and held the pendant in his palm. She studied it carefully, her eyes softening the moment she saw the engraving. "That symbol," she said, "was given only to the one we called the first ally. It meant he was trusted, that he carried peace. When he left our world, he took it with him so our bond would never be forgotten." Rylan's throat tightened slightly. His grandmother's stories, the strange way she spoke of the past, the way she always told him to protect the pendant, all suddenly felt heavier. He whispered, "My grandmother told me it came from a long line of ancestors. She said it was older than anything we owned. She said it was precious. But she never told me it was from another world." The queen nodded slowly. "Perhaps she did not know the whole truth. Or perhaps she wanted you to discover it when the time was right." Rylan didn't know what to say. He stared at the pendant, wishing it could speak, wishing it could tell him the journey it had taken. Before reaching him, the queen rose from her seat and moved to the large window of the vessel. "The moment your ship entered our sky," she said, "our temples sensed the sacred energy of the seal. This is why the royal guard gathered. It is why I came personally. Your arrival is not ordinary." Rylan followed her gaze. Outside the window, the planet's shimmering landscape passed beneath them, glowing forests, blue rivers that sparkled like crystal, and tall structures that looked like artwork more than buildings. It was beautiful, calm, and full of life. "I don't know if I can be who you think I am," he said honestly. "I'm not a hero. I'm not a negotiator or a leader. I just follow orders and explore places." The queen turned and looked at him with a soft, reassuring smile. The first ally was not a leader either when he arrived. He was simply someone who cared. Someone who listened. Someone who wanted to help. Rylan felt a warmth in his chest at her words. Still, he shook his head slightly. "But why kneel? You're a queen. You shouldn't kneel to someone like me." Her smile deepened, but her voice remained calm. "Our custom is not about power. We kneel to the one who carries the mark of the protector. We honor the bond, not the person. Your ancestors' choice created peace for us, and so we show respect to the one who carries his legacy." Rylan looked down at his hands again. He didn't feel like anyone's protector. He felt ordinary, unsure, even a little scared. But the queen's kindness made it easier to breathe. After a moment of silence, the queen raised her hand gently. A small floating hologram appeared between them. It showed a tall figure, clearly human, wearing the same pendant Rylan now wore. The man had a calm expression, peaceful eyes, and a determined posture. He looked brave in a quiet way. "This is the oldest record we have of the first ally," the queen explained. "This image was preserved in our ancient archives. Look at the pendant he wears. The shape, the lines identical to yours." Rylan stared at the image, feeling goosebumps rise on his arms. The pendant in the hologram was exactly the same. There was no doubt. "No mistake," he whispered. "So he really existed. And he really came here?" The queen nodded. "Yes, and he left a mark on our history that is still remembered." Rylan slowly touched the hologram, watching his fingers pass through the glowing shape. "I wish I knew his name. I wish I knew how he got here." "We hope to learn that together," the queen said. "Our archives contain clues, stories, even personal notes he left behind. Alan looked at her in surprise. He wrote things. Many things, the Queen replied. He left messages for the future, though some of them we never understood. Perhaps you will. Rylan wasn't sure if he would understand anything, but the idea made his heart race with both fear and curiosity. Just then, the vessel began to slow down. The Queen glanced at the ceiling, sensing the change. We are arriving at the palace, she said. Rylan looked out the window again. A large city came into view, tall towers, glowing bridges, open plazas filled with soft light. The structures looked like they were made of glass, crystal, and energy. It was breathtaking. The Queen stood beside him. When we land, there will be many people waiting. They wish to see you not because of who you are today, but because of what your pendant means to our history. Rylan's shoulders tensed. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. The Queen placed a gentle hand near his shoulder, not touching him, but offering reassurance. You do not have to be ready. You only have to be honest. We will guide you. The vessel touched down smoothly, and the doors began to open. Rylan could hear voices outside, many voices soft, curious, hopeful. He took a deep breath. He didn't know why fate had brought him here. He didn't know if he could handle what was coming. But he stepped forward anyway, because something in his heart told him this journey was meant for him. And as he walked beside the Queen, with the pendant resting softly against his chest, he felt something new inside him, something like courage, or maybe destiny. Whatever it was only just beginning. Rylan stepped into the grand palace with hesitant steps, unsure of what would happen next. The moment he entered, a warm, golden light surrounded him. The walls of the palace were tall and curved, glowing softly with patterns that looked like moving stars. Everything felt alive, as if the building itself breathed gently around him. He tried not to stare, but it was impossible not to. The place was beautiful in a calm, peaceful way that reminded him of old temples on Earth. The Queen walked beside him, her presence steady and comforting. Even though she was the ruler of the entire planet, she walked slowly so he could keep up. A group of royal advisors followed them, whispering among themselves. Their voices were low but filled with curiosity and sometimes confusion. Rylan could feel their eyes on him, some full of hope, some full of questions. He whispered quietly to the Queen, I'm not used to being watched like this. She gave a soft, reassuring smile. They are not judging you. They're trying to understand what your arrival means. It has been many generations since the symbol of the first ally appeared on our world again. Rylan nodded, though the weight of that statement made his knees feel weak. He kept touching his pendant without thinking. It was strange to imagine that a simple necklace could cause so much attention. The Queen led him into a large hall. Its ceiling was high and curved like the inside of a giant shell, shining with gentle silver light. At the center stood a long table covered in ancient scrolls, carvings, glowing stones, and pieces of old machines. Everything looked delicate and important, like puzzles waiting to be solved. This, the Queen said as she gestured gracefully, is the Hall of Origins. It holds our oldest records, including everything we know about the first ally. Rylan walked slowly to the table. The air felt different here still, quiet, almost respectful. He reached toward a carved stone tablet with symbols he didn't recognize. The moment his fingers touched it, the stone lit up softly, as if welcoming him. Some advisors gasped. One of them stepped forward and whispered, It responds to him, just like it responded to the first ally. Rylan quickly pulled his hand back. I didn't mean to activate anything, sorry. The Queen shook her head gently. You did nothing wrong. The archives have always reacted to the energy of the seal. Your pendant is part of that energy. Rylan let out a slow breath. It was strange to think that objects could react to him simply because of the necklace he wore. It made him feel connected to a history he had never known. An elderly advisor stepped forward. His hair glowed faintly with age, and his robe was lined with sparkling threads. He bowed politely to Rylan before speaking. If I may, Your Majesty, he said to the Queen, perhaps now is the time to show him the early records. The Queen nodded once. Yes. Begin with the arrival. The advisor touched a small crystal on the table, and suddenly a large hologram rose from the floor. It showed a dark sky, a small ship crashing into a forest, and a human man climbing out, limping, tired but alive. He looked rough from the journey, with simple clothing and a backpack that had clearly been damaged. Rylan leaned forward, completely drawn in by the image. The man didn't look like a hero. He looked like someone who had survived something difficult. The advisor said softly, "This was the first moment the first ally stepped onto our world. He arrived alone. He had no weapons, no special powers, and no expectations. Yet he changed everything." The hologram shifted, showing scenes of the man helping heal injured creatures, approaching alien tribes with kindness, and using simple tools to help repair damaged homes after storms. He wasn't loud or heroic, he simply helped wherever he could. Rylan watched silently, feeling the weight of every image. "He looks ordinary," he said quietly. "He was," the queen replied. "But his heart was rare, cared about others even when he had nothing." Rylan felt something stir in his chest, a warm, sad feeling. He had always admired people who made a difference with kindness rather than force. Seeing this unknown human doing exactly that made him wish he had known him. He swallowed hard. "Do you know his name?" The advisor shook his head gently. "His name was lost in time. He wrote it in old journals, but those sections faded. You know only the symbol he carried and the legacy he left." Rylan looked down at his pendant again. It felt heavier than before, as if the past were quietly resting in his hand. Another hologram appeared, showing the first ally standing between two groups of tall alien leaders. They looked angry, divided, unwilling to listen. The human man held up his hands, speaking calmly. Slowly, the leaders lowered their voices. Their expressions softened. Rylan felt a deep sense of admiration. He stopped a conflict just by talking. "Not just talking," the queen said softly. He listened. He understood. He respected both sides. That was his strength. Rylan took a slow breath. "I don't think I can be like him." The queen turned toward him, her expression warm and honest. "We are not asking you to be him. We only want you to understand your connection to our history." Rylan nodded weakly. Deep inside, he wondered whether the universe expected more from him, and if it did, was he ready? The advisor touched another crystal. A new hologram appeared, this one showing a room filled with old writings. First ally was sitting at a table, writing in a journal with slow, careful strokes. His eyes looked thoughtful, tired, and hopeful all at once. Rylan whispered, "You said he left messages?" "Yes," the queen replied. "Wrote about the challenges he faced, the friends he made, and the lessons he learned from our people." Rylan felt a sudden surge of emotion. "Can I read them?" The queen smiled softly. "You may. That is why we brought you here." She led him to a long stone shelf at the side of the hall. On it were several old books, their pages preserved through ancient techniques. The covers were worn, but the symbols were still clear. Rylan carefully opened one. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, though the language was partly translated by glowing lines added later by scholars. The first line read, "I do not know if I will ever return home, but if another carries the seal after me, let them know this world is worth protecting." Rylan's fingers trembled as he traced the words. Another entry said, "Peace is not found in strength. Peace begins when someone chooses to listen." Rylan closed the book gently. His heart felt full yet heavy. The queen watched him quietly. His spirit was gentle. "You carry that same gentleness. That is why your arrival means more than you think." Rylan slowly shook his head. "I'm just trying to understand all this. Never imagined my family had any connection to another world." The queen stepped closer. "Sometimes destiny travels quietly through generations. Sometimes it waits for the right moment." Rylan thought of his grandmother, her warm voice, her stories, the way she held the pendant with such care. Maybe she had sensed something, even if she did not know the details. He looked around the hall again, the glowing walls, the ancient records, the hopeful expressions of the advisors. He felt surrounded by history, by expectation, by something far bigger than himself. He took a deep breath. "What do you want me to do?" The queen held his gaze steadily. "For now, simply learn. Understand our past. Understand your connection to it. There will be time to decide later." Rylan nodded slowly. Learning, he could do that. Understanding, he could try. He looked again at the hologram of the first ally, the man who changed a world not through power, but through kindness. And for the first time, Rylan felt a small spark inside him, not fear, not confusion, but possibility. A quiet beginning of something greater. Rylan woke early the next morning, though he had barely slept. The guest chamber the queen had given him was peaceful and warm. With soft lights that changed color depending on the time of day, the walls shimmered like a calm ocean, and the bed felt like resting on a cloud. But his mind had been too busy to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the holograms of the first ally, the ancient books, and the queen kneeling before him. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his face slowly. How can one necklace cause all this? He whispered to himself. A soft chime echoed gently through the room. The door slid open, and a royal attendant stepped inside. She was small compared to most Aravelians, with bright blue eyes and a warm smile. She bowed respectfully. "Good morning, Rylan. The queen has asked me to bring you to her private garden when you are ready." Rylan nodded and stood, pulling on his boots. "Is it far?" "Not far," she replied, "but it is a special place. Only a few are allowed to enter." Rylan followed her through the quiet halls of the palace. The early light filtered in through curved windows, painting soft silver patterns on the floor. Everywhere he went, people greeted him politely. Some looked curious, some hopeful, and some simply surprised. Rylan didn't know how to handle being noticed so much. He wasn't used to being important. Back on Earth, he was quiet, average, someone who walked through crowds without anyone turning their head. Here, it was different. The attendant led him to a tall doorway covered with vines that glowed gently. When the door opened, a warm breeze touched his face. It carried the scent of flowers, fresh leaves, and something sweet he couldn't name. Rylan stepped inside and, his breath caught, the queen's private garden was one of the most beautiful places he had ever seen. The trees shimmered with soft blue lights, their leaves opening and closing gently as if they were breathing. Flowers bloomed along a crystal-clear path, glowing softly when he walked near them. A small stream ran through the middle, its water sparkling like liquid glass, and at the center of it all stood Queen Valara. She was facing the stream, her long robe trailing behind her like a river of light. She turned when she heard Rylan enter, and her smile was soft and welcoming. "Thank you for coming," she said gently. Rylan stepped closer, still taking in the peaceful surroundings. "This place feels like a dream." "It is a place of reflection," she replied. "I come here when I need clarity or strength." Rylan nodded slowly. "I understand why. It's so calm." The queen motioned for him to sit by the stream. She seated herself across from him, her posture graceful as always. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The garden's soft sounds filled the silence, the trickling water, the rustle of leaves, the gentle hum of glowing plants. Finally, the queen said, "Yesterday must have felt overwhelming. I hope you were able to rest." Rylan let out a small breath. "I tried. But I kept thinking about everything I saw. The first ally, the records, the pendant. I still don't feel like any of it fits me." The queen tilted her head slightly. "May I ask you something? Before you came here, before any of this happened, what kind of person did you think you were?" Rylan looked down at the grass, unsure how to answer. "I don't know. Not special. Not important. I just did my job. I followed directions. I wasn't a hero or anything." She listened closely, her silver eyes warm. "Do you believe being a hero is what we expect of you?" Rylan hesitated. "Isn't that what the first ally was?" The queen shook her head gently. The first ally did not see himself as a hero. He simply cared. He helped because he could. He never asked for recognition, and he never asked for a role. He was humble, just like you. Rylan felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't know whether to feel embarrassed or grateful. The queen continued softly, "You carry the symbol he once carried, but we do not expect you to become him. We only ask you to understand what the symbol means to us." Rylan looked at the pendant resting against his chest. Everyone keeps looking at me like I'm something big, but what if I can't be what they need? The queen leaned forward slightly. Then you cannot be, and that is enough. Your worth is not measured by what others expect. Her voice was calm, but the words felt powerful. Rylan took a slow breath. I'm trying to understand your world, but everything is happening so fast. I know, she said kindly, and I will not rush you. Today I want to show you something that may help you understand the deeper meaning of your arrival. She stood and extended a hand. Rylan rose to follow her. They walked through the garden until they reached a large archway covered in bright, glowing vines. When the queen touched one of the vines, the archway opened into a gentle light. Rylan stepped through and found himself inside a circular room made of crystal. It wasn't bright like the rest of the palace. Instead, it glowed softly, like the inside of a warm lantern. This, the queen said, is the Chamber of Echoes. Every leader of Aravel comes here for guidance. Rylan looked around slowly. Why bring me here? The queen touched her hand to a crystal pillar, and suddenly the room filled with soft images, faint echoes of memories, feelings, and old voices. He heard laughter, speeches, peaceful music, and whispers of hope. Then slowly, a new echo appeared, a human voice, faint, warm, steady. Rylan's eyes widened. Is that? Yes, the queen said softly. A preserved echo of the first ally. His voice remains in this chamber. It comes only when the seal is near. Rylan felt his heart thump in his chest as the voice grew clearer. He couldn't understand every word, but the tone felt familiar, gentle, patient, kind. The queen watched Rylan carefully. Do you feel it? Rylan nodded slowly, his voice a whisper. It feels comforting. The echo faded, leaving the chamber quiet again. Rylan stared at the empty space, wishing he could have heard more. The queen spoke again, her voice gentle. Your ancestor left more than messages. He left a spirit of calm that still touches our world. And that spirit awakened when you arrived.
Rylan swallowed.
Why me? Why not someone else from Earth? Because you carry the symbol, she said simply. And symbols choose their own path through time. Rylan looked down at the pendant. It felt heavier than ever. He touched it slowly, feeling its shape against his palm. I don't know if I can make a difference, he admitted quietly. The queen stepped closer, her expression kind. You already have, not through action, but through presence. Your arrival has brought unity among our clans again. Many who have disagreed for years are now standing together. They want to meet the carrier of the seal. Rylan blinked. I didn't do anything. You exist, the queen said softly. Sometimes that is enough to change a path. Rylan felt the weight of her words settle in his heart. They left the chamber and returned to the garden. The queen paused under a glowing tree and looked at him seriously. Tonight, she said gently, there will be a gathering. Leaders from all provinces will come. They will want to hear you speak. Rylan felt the air leave his lungs. Speak? What should I say? Speak honestly. Speak as yourself. That is all you need. He stared at her in worry. I'm not good at speeches. You do not need to be, she said. You only need to be real. Rylan nodded slowly. He wasn't ready. But maybe he didn't have to be. Maybe he just had to be himself as he walked back through the palace. He realized something. He had come to learn about their history. But now, their world was learning about him, and the journey was far from over. When the day of the great gathering finally arrived, Rylan felt as if his entire world had changed in only a few days. He had come to this planet expecting a short mission, some pictures, a simple report. But now he stood behind tall palace doors. Wearing a woven cloak the queen had gifted him, and holding the ancient pendant that had caused all of this. The hall outside was filled with voices, thousands of aliens waiting to hear the truth from their queen. Some believed in him. Some doubted him. Some feared him. And some hoped he was the answer to their problems. Rylan took a deep breath as Queen Valara approached him. She looked calm, but he had learned that she always tried to appear calm for her people, even when she was unsure inside. Her silver eyes met his and she gave a small nod. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. "I don't know if anyone could be ready for something like this," Rylan answered honestly. "But I'm here." "That is enough," she said, and her voice carried quiet comfort. The palace doors opened slowly. A soft, warm light flowed inward as the crowd outside fell silent. The queen stepped out first, and Rylan followed her into the open square. It was enormous wide steps, tall statues, and thousands of citizens standing close together. Some held banners with old symbols. Some wore traditional clothing. Many held small copies of the royal seal. All eyes fell on the human walking beside their queen. Rylan felt the silence press against him. But the queen raised her hand, and the crowd bowed their heads respectfully. She stepped forward and spoke with a clear, steady voice that carried across the entire square. "My people," she began, "you have gathered here today to learn the truth that connects our past to our present, and truth that may guide our future." The crowd listened without a sound. "You have heard rumors," the queen continued. "You have heard stories of a human carrying the ancient seal. You have seen fear, excitement, confusion, and hope. Today, I will explain everything." Rylan watched her, amazed by her calm strength. She looked like someone born to lead. She pointed gently toward Rylan. "When I saw this human for the first time, I did something no one expected. I knelt before him. Many of you wondered why. Some believed it was weakness. Some believed he was meant to rule us. Others believed it was a sign of danger." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But the truth is, none of those things." A soft murmur spread through the crowd. But everyone kept listening. She continued. "Long ago, when our world was in danger, a traveler from another star landed among us. He was the first human we ever knew. He did not come with armies or threats. He came with kindness. He spoke to our divided clans, helped them understand each other, and guided them toward peace. He saved lives. He united us. And when he left, he carried with him a symbol that marked him as our honored ally." Rylan touched the pendant gently. The metal felt warm against his skin. "The pendant that he carried," the queen said, "has reappeared after generations. It now rests with this human beside me. And because of that, by our ancient tradition, I knelt not to show fear or surrender, but to honor the one who carries the mark of peace." The crowd grew silent again. Deeper than before, Rylan felt something heavy shift in his chest. Hearing the queen explain it so clearly made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. Queen Valara stepped closer to him, turning slightly so that the entire square could see them both. "But hear this," she said firmly. "This human is not here to rule. He has not asked for power. He has not demanded anything from us. He has shown respect, patience, and honesty. These are the qualities the first human ally carried, and these are the qualities we honor." Rylan felt his heart beating fast. He knew he had to speak next. The queen turned to him and gave a small nod of encouragement. He stepped forward, feeling thousands of eyes on him. "I want to be honest," Rylan began, holding the pendant lightly in his hand. "When I first arrived here, I didn't understand anything. I didn't know why the queen knelt. I didn't know why this pendant mattered so much. I felt scared. I felt lost. And I felt like I didn't deserve the attention you all gave me." The crowd listened closely. "But as I learned more," he continued, "I realized something important. My ancestor did not become your ally because he was strong or special. He helped because he cared. And I want to follow the same path, not as a leader, not as a ruler, but as a friend." A wave of soft murmurs passed through the crowd, but this time they sounded warm, hopeful. "I will not take your throne," Rylan said clearly. "I will not command your people. I do not want power. What I want is to help, just like my ancestor did. I want to learn from you and work with you and understand your world. If my presence can bring peace or guidance, then I will give my best." Queen Valara stepped beside him again. Her voice carried strength as she declared, "You have heard the truth. You have heard his heart. Now you understand why I knelt." It was not submission, it was gratitude. The crowd slowly began to bow their heads, not out of fear, but out of respect. Some even placed their hands over their hearts. Ryland felt overwhelmed. He had never imagined anything like this. The moment felt heavy, important, and strangely peaceful. The queen then turned toward him, and to everyone's surprise, she slowly lowered herself to one knee, again graceful and steady. But before she could fully kneel, Ryland stepped forward quickly and knelt as well, facing her directly. Gasps rose from the crowd. Kneeling beside the queen was something unheard of. "I kneel too," he said quietly. "Not because I am above you, but because we stand equal." The queen looked at him with gentle surprise, and then she smiled, small but sincere. The crowd erupted into warm voices, not shouting, not cheering loudly, but soft sounds of relief and hope. Families hugged. Elders nodded with approval. Guards lowered their weapons with peaceful expressions. In that moment, something changed across the entire square. The fear that had once spread through the city seemed to fade away. The doubt that had divided the clans weakened, and the hope that many had been afraid to believe in finally began to grow. The queen rose to her feet again, and Ryland stood with her. She placed one hand on his shoulder, not as a ruler giving an order, but as a friend offering support. "Welcome," she said softly. "Not as a leader, not as a stranger, but as a part of our story." Ryland felt his chest tighten with emotion. This was more than a mission now. More than a discovery, he had become a bridge between two worlds. As the gathering ended and the crowd slowly dispersed, the queen walked with him back toward the palace. The evening sky glowed with soft colors, purples, blues, and gentle gold. Everything felt calm and hopeful. "What happens now?" Ryland asked quietly. "Now," the queen said, "we learn from each other. You walk our lands. You meet our people. You hear their stories. And in return, we will learn from you. This is how peace grows." Ryland nodded. "I'll do my best." "No, you will," she said warmly. And as they entered the palace together, Ryland felt a new journey beginning, one he had never expected. One built on trust, understanding, and the memory of the human who came before him. A journey that would shape the future of two worlds, starting with a simple act, a queen kneeling and a human kneeling beside her.